All right. Good afternoon, everybody. Again, welcome to another edition of Journey to Becoming a Head Coach. As always, I'm your host, Jeff Freeman. Thank you for the support. Thank you for the love. This has been fun to do. I love sharing the information, the amount of calls, text messages, and things like that have been fantastic. The support's been overwhelming. So today, we go over part 2 of COVID-19. This is going to cover pretty much June to September, with a little bit of a backlog to kind of like that March, April, May, spring ball kind of thing. I'm going to go through the cohorts. I'm going to go through the CIF. I'm hoping this isn't going to go over, 30, 40 minutes, but to be quite honest, no guarantee on that front. But again, so welcome for the ride, and here we go. So March to May recap. School gets shut down March 16th. There's really no telling. It's 2 weeks to slow the spread. That was the big key, and everyone was a part of it. No one really knew anything back then. We were just kind of like, all right, let's learn what this virus is. Let's take care of business. Let's make sure our families, their families, make sure everybody's safe. At that time, everybody was like, hey, you know what? This is some scary stuff. Let's really make sure we take care of our students and their families, and our teachers and their families, and our coaches and their families. So everyone was on board. Everything sounded good. We were like, all right, let's do this. And then right at that point, I had met with our athletic trainer, and we sat down and like, okay, as things move forward, what are we going to need to do? So we kind of started developing protocol based on what we were hearing, based on how they were treating restaurants, based on how they were treating everybody else. So we kept hearing about, social distancing, masks, cohorts, sanitizing. So we started trying to figure out, okay, how is this going to look like in a football world? Temperature checks, masks, all that stuff. So we started kind of piecing it together, and we started creating some stuff. And he did a lot of the legwork. I truly appreciate him, and I hope he continues on. I know he's looking for some college gigs, and I know he's going to get it, and he's going to do a college some really good service. So I appreciate him very much. His name is DJ or Daniel Desmond. Really good athletic trainer, really good guy. The kids love him, and he works hard. He works way harder than you see on the front end. There's a lot of behind the scenes work that he does. So again, I appreciate him. It'll be sad when he does leave, but he needs to be at a college. So again, moving on. So we just started to try to piece it together. What's it going to look like? How's it going to look? How are we going to do it with 80, 90, 100 kids? Because at the time we were pushing 100 towards the end of last year, and we were looking at about 100, 110 this year. So that's what we're looking at. So we're trying to figure out how we're going to piece that together. So May and June roll around, some guidelines come out, and it's cohort, spacing, sanitization, masks, the guidelines, no sharing equipment, no indoor weight room, none of that. Can't share equipment, can't do anything. Those were kind of like the first big ones that came out. So we're like, all right, so we developed a practice plan. We're like, okay, we're going to obviously do the temperature checks. We're going to have them wear their masks. We're going to put them in. At that point, they were called pods. So we're working on pods of 9. It was like max 9 per, and then it was max like 10 or 11 per 2 coaches. We just tried to keep it at 9. And that's pretty much what we did for, May and June and part of July until the CIF came out with their announcement on July 17th, which I'll show you here in a second. So that was what we did. We pieced that together, and we're like, okay, so when we're ready to go, we're good to go. So that's what we thought coming March and April. We're like, okay, if we get clearance to go in May, we're good. If we get clearance to go in June, we're good. So we pieced it together. We take it to admin. We showed it to them. They took it to the district. They took it to the county health department. And eventually we get cleared for June 15th, where we could get going with cohorts of 9. So a lot of hard work went into that. We were trying to piece together. I was talking to other schools in the Sac Joaquin and the north section and all, and in the central and in the coast section. They were asking kind of like what we were doing, how we were doing it, how we were going to get out so quick. We were one of the first schools to get restarted that I'm aware of, as far as just jumping in May and June and getting kids back out on the field, even though literally we did, I call them jailhouse workouts. I mean, we had them in a big circle, separated in their pods, all that stuff, 6 feet apart. They had their masks on, all that stuff, and we were just doing squats, push-ups, lunges, burpees, jumping jacks, crunches, planks, you name it. That's what we were, and we were just doing it out on the field because we figured the stadium was a big enough section. So we did that with our freshmen, we did it with our JV, we did it with our varsity, and we just had this pod of 9, this pod of 9, and we just had them in big old circles separated, just doing jailhouse workouts for the month of June and July. And funny thing about it killed them. We were doing sets of 20 or 25, and they were fried by the end of it. So that alone just kind of showed you them just being out in March was kind of rough. I mean, we were sending them stuff online, but kids not having the equipment, not having the motivation to some degree, because at that point we already had heard murmurs that kids were like, "Oh, the season's gonna get canceled. Season's gonna get canceled." We were trying to tell them, "No, it's not. No, it's not. We got this. We'll be fine. We'll be fine. We'll be fine. It'll be slowed down." Of course, looking back, we're like, "Man, some of them were right. The season almost looked like it's gonna be canceled." So that's where we're at right now. At that point in time, in May and June, we get them back out June 15th, and we're rolling through. So this is what the sample plan looked like. So we went 2 days a week to start because we were kind of worried. We didn't want to overexpose anyone. So, we went in the mornings over the summer. We had the freshmen coming in 7:30 to 9:30. 7:30 to 8 was screening. 8 to 8:15 was pod specific warm up. Then pod position specific. So we tried to separate them based on their position. So we tried to separate them O-line, D-line, wide receiver, running back. Quarterbacks were kind of tricky because it's like you want them to necessarily be with the receivers, but at the time we didn't have any footballs or any equipment. So at that point, we figured quarterbacks, running backs, and wide receivers, based on the numbers, we could just kind of create 2 or 3 pods of that core group together. So we're like, all right, well, we'll just put these 3 receivers, these 3 running backs, and these 2 quarterbacks together. And there we go. There's 8. They're done. They're ready to go. And so that's just kind of how we pieced it. We didn't go very long, and we did skill-specific things, but nothing was with a football. So it was very weird to see, agility drills for, our running backs jumping over imaginary cones and imaginary bags. Eventually, later on, we got clearance to use the bags because we're like, we're not touching them. They're laying on the ground. So like, oh, they're just laying on the ground? Yeah, we're not touching them. We're not hitting them. We're not kicking them. We're just jumping over them right around there. Oh, that's fine. That's fine. So after we explained them, like, yeah, we're not hitting them. We're not hugging them. We're not tackling them. We just want to use them to run around and jump over. They're like, okay, that's fine. So we finally got clearance from our health department on that, and our admin and district and everything. We got clearance on that. And this is how we did it. So we went 2 days a week with the freshmen going Mondays and Wednesdays, and the JV going Tuesdays and Thursdays, and we took Fridays off as an entire group. Later on, we did move the freshmen to an afternoon because our varsity were going in the afternoon and in the evenings on Mondays and Wednesdays, and we didn't like that split because our varsity at the time, because like I told you guys in some of the head coach journey pieces, I had 7 football coaches ready to go in March, and by around this time, I had about 5. One had kind of dropped off. Another one I was trying to recruit from Oregon. So at the time, I was looking like, okay, I'm at 7. I had 4 or 5 at the time at practice. But we're like, okay, I don't have a freshman staff yet. I have one guy that's trying to get hired. I have another guy that's going through his student teaching, and I got another guy that's still in his student teaching. So I'm looking at him like, okay, well, I don't have anybody. So we figured that we were going to try and coach a little bit of both. But again, we were like, okay, well, we can't do that because then we got the 9. So we tried to stretch everything out. We kind of combined the freshman and varsity staff, and we kind of brought everybody together. But as far as coaching staff, and then split and said, okay, your section, you're going to coach the freshman, this section, you're going to coach the varsity, and then the next week, or then the 2 weeks, then we'll flip, because we were trying to avoid flipping every week because we didn't want to have any concerns with cross-contamination and all that other stuff. And this is stuff like we worked out week by week and day by day. Right? Me and the trainer would sit back, okay, we got to fix this hole, and then the next day 2 more holes would pop up. So it was guess and check all around. From start to finish, just because we knew there were going to be holes somewhere. We were just trying to log in every minute we could. So, and then you see this down at the bottom, we have a staggered release. We didn't want students hanging around a lot, which again, that was another thing hard that was to control as a coaching staff. We're just like, okay, well, your group go over here. We were trying to have specific spots, but that didn't work. So we're like, okay, well, let's just try and release them in 5-minute increments. And because even though you'd say, hey, go stand over on this side, they would trickle over and eventually be next to each other. And you're like, man, we don't want them within 6 feet, even if they're wearing masks or whatnot, or a kid will forget his mask or lose it. All these little things that we're like, okay, well, no, we got to keep them apart as much as possible. So it was a nightmare just as far as the logistics, because you're hoping that kids remember masks, you're hoping they don't lose them, you're hoping you have enough. They want to see each other. They haven't seen each other since March. So you're sitting there telling them, no, you can't be near each other. You got to stay apart from 6 feet, which is hard for them to do. They just want to hug and touch each other. So in any case, this was the sample plan we came up with, and this pretty much guided us through June and most of July. And then like you see right here, varsity went 5 to about 7:30. Same thing, same setup, 5 to 7, 5 to 5:30 with screening, pod warm-up, pod-specific individuals. I mean, it says install, but at the same time, it was kind of rough because we were trying to do some install stuff, but it was kind of funky trying to do that when you're trying to have your O-line, it's like, hey, you got to be 6 feet apart, so their splits are ginormous, but you're still trying to teach the blocking scheme for a split back fly at the time. So you're still trying to coach that and teach that, and that was just it was interesting as it was. So we're trying to move to a shotgun style fly offense, and you're like, okay, you're trying to teach these things, and you're trying to teach routes for your receivers with no balls, and running backs, you're trying to teach them, handoffs with no ball, and you're like, okay, well, this quarterback's with this set of receivers, this quarterback's with them, we can't switch for 10 days. So it's like, okay, they're going to be here working run, they're going to be here working pass. So again, it was a logistic nightmare. But again, the kids were excited, we were excited. We're like, okay, hey, we're getting after it. We're gonna get things rolling. It'll be fine. So and again, we're in our heads. We're like, there's no way we're gonna have a cancel season. We'll be fine. Everything will be good to go. This was the other example. This was really how we kind of drew it up. So again, like we had the half hour, the 4 to 4:30 COVID screening, and that involved temperature checks. And at the time, we were doing daily screening, so we had a Google Doc, and the kids had to fill it out before they came to practice. That became a logistical nightmare because none of them had Wi-Fi. So then we had them filling it out while they were there, or we were asking them the questions and writing it down. So that's what we were doing at the time. We were doing the temperature checks. The kids were supposed to answer a questionnaire before they showed up, and then they had another questionnaire they were supposed to answer every 2 weeks online, and then we were asking the questions if they didn't fill any of those out. So that was, again, we were trying to make sure we had everything built in. And again, we had the pod-specific format, maintain safe distance from each other. Athletes within pod will follow social distancing procedure, maintain safe distance. Again, we had everything. Equipment is sanitized between each use. And at the time, that was where we were preparing to hopefully have footballs. We had to wait. I think we had to wait 2 or 3 weeks, and then we finally got balls in right at the end of June, early July, because we just convinced them. It's like, look, we're going to have a bucket, and we're just going to wipe it down or spray it down, and we'll be fine. And actually, no, we actually started where every player that handled the ball had their own ball, and then we sanitized those at the end. So there was no exchange. That didn't actually start happening until when we came back in like September and October, where we finally like, okay, we're just gonna have a bucket, we're gonna spray it down, and we'll exchange it that way. So, and that was when obviously everyone was borderline red, orange, and some counties were in yellow. So I mean, that was when everything was looked like everything was gonna go almost borderline back to normal. So, and this is where we had it. Again, nice, easy setup. We tried to do the pods based on position for offense. And then we kept it an offensive week, and then we switched to a defensive week. Because we would have 1 or 2 players where we might have a lineman, an offensive lineman that played linebacker, or we might have a running back that played linebacker. So they might be a little bit of switching here and there. So we're like, okay, well, let's just do offensive all week. That gives us 3 days in case they get any symptoms. And then if they do, then we can just send that previous pod home. So we're working on symptoms, pods, because at that time it was like if anyone showed symptoms, we sent the pod home. So that was kind of that thing. Later on, it came to, okay, they got to have direct contact, then they can go home. And then now it's like if they have a positive test, if they test positive, then you send that pod home. But so you get a positive test, the kid who has symptoms just stays home, or the student that just has been in direct contact stays home. So again, things have changed, things have gotten better, things have gotten easier, but it's still in my mind a logistical nightmare moving forward. But anyway, so this is what we pieced together, and then we would switch it for defense. June plans, again, cohorts of 9, 3 teams. We showed you the templates. Later on, we did create an outdoor weight room right around July. Our athletic director was awesome. He went and got us 2 power racks from Dick's Sporting Goods for like $450 a piece before all the equipment disappeared. And then he had a local welder build us 3 more squat stands based off of just stuff we had sent him from Rogue and Titan and some other fitness places. Just, hey, can you build us these squat stands with some of these hooks and safeties? So we were able to get a total of 5 squat racks outside by our pool. So which was nice because then we were actually able to have the kids lift, and we were able to sanitize the equipment between each. So we had 20-minute workouts, 10-minute sanitization period, and then the next group would come in. So it worked out really nice. July, we were picking up steam. Numbers were dropping, though, because as kids saw numbers and as kids saw and as students started seeing things started getting crazy. Again, we started adding the footballs as far as individualized. So, like, all the running backs had one, all the receivers had their own. So they would run the route with the football in their hand. They would run the mesh point with the ball in the hand. So if we had, like, a group of running backs and one quarterback would hold his ball, fake the mesh, running back already had his ball. He would fake like he was getting a handoff in the golf, so there was no interchanging, no nothing. And then we would sanitize those at the end. Same thing with the receivers. They would have their own ball, run their route. Unfortunately, we couldn't really fake throwing it, so we didn't bother. It just was like, why are we going to throw a ball if they're not going to catch it? So we just had them run the routes with the footballs in their hand. And we just kind of noticed that the excitement was dwindling. Again, we were having a hard time keeping our students motivated. Even though we were out there, even though we were putting in the offense, everything like that, the numbers just kind of would dwindle each week, we noticed. And then weekly, we would adjust the cohorts. Like I said, offensively, we would have that. And then the next week would be defense, and we would adjust accordingly. And then like that, it was kind of interesting. I had a game plan in the back of my head, be like, I couldn't really do cohorts of 9. I had to try and think in my head, okay, I have to almost do cohorts of 7 or 8 because in the event on my roster, if this kid comes back, I got to be able to make sure I don't have a cohort that has over 9 or 10. So I'm like, I got to make sure that we're not maxing out or adding extra. So I had to like shrink the cohorts to plan for a random kid showing up that hadn't been there for 2 or 3 weeks. So that was another interesting piece that we kind of had to consider. Is I'm just like, well, I can't have all cohorts of 9 because then if some random kid that hasn't been here for 3 weeks because maybe his parents were concerned about it, maybe he was sick, maybe his grades were stinking and they wanted him to stay home for a little bit, or maybe he had to get a summer job, wherever that is, all of a sudden now his schedule opens up and he can show up. I mean, I had to have a spot for him. He couldn't just work out and do stuff by himself. So I had to make sure there were extra spots open in all these cohorts in case we had new players show up or transfers or anything like that. So little crazy things that you don't think about that just kind of popped in. So right around July 17th, CIF comes out with their new schedule. And we were hoping it wasn't going to happen. You know, there were so many rumors of flipping spring and fall and, you know, canceling the season, moving into the winter, or just kind of having a 3-year plan, a 2-year plan. There were so many crazy things going on. It was just nice to finally have something. I'm going to share it with you guys right now, just so some of you can see what we were dealing with at the time. But it was just, so this is what they ended up doing. And this came out, you know, updated as of July 20th. So what they decided to do is they moved football and everyone to the winter and created season 1 and then created season 2. So in my head, what I decided to do was basically recreate the normal CIF schedule in a winter size schedule. So we had a decision to make as a staff after this came out. I was like, well, we could technically practice all the way through August because they eliminated the dead period. They eliminated all that. So we're like, all right, well, we can practice through all of August. But in my head, I'm like, do we really want to kill our kids? We've already started in June. We go June, July, August, and then, you know, September, October, November, and we're not going pads or anything. I mean, we're going to be practicing for almost 6-7 months before we even put pads on. If we keep going, because June, July, August, September, October, November, I mean, yeah, by the time we would put stuff on, it'd be almost 7 months. So it was just in our heads, like, no, let's give them the month of August off. And this is where I'm going to tell you where I made a mistake. But in any case, said, hey, we're going to give them the month of August off. We'll give them stuff online to do. We'll have Zoom meetings. We'll be good. And I'll explain to them why. Because then what I did is I said, okay, September is going to be the new spring ball. In my head, I was like, hey, middle of September, we'll come back September 14th, September 21st, somewhere in there. That'll be the new spring ball. September/October will be the new May. October, November will be the new June, July. And then we'll have an active or we'll create our own dead period right in between Thanksgiving break. We'll give them 2 weeks off from Thanksgiving break until that December 7th date where we'll come back and, you know, have helmets on and all that other stuff. So I was like, okay, cool. So I just moved the whole original CIF calendar and just changed the months. I was like, all right, this is going to be awesome. We'll be good to go. Not knowing what was going to happen next. So doing that, there was a lot of pushback as far as like, well, why are you just canceling this? Can't we just go? And I said, well, otherwise we're going to be doing this. So that was the decision we made as a staff. We gave everyone a month off to kind of collect everything, have meetings, all this stuff, and we get everything going. So we were going to start December 7th. Our first scrimmage was going to be the 31st, which really we're going to have it on, I think, the 2nd. We were supposed to scrimmage Casa at the time and Sutter at the time. So we're like, okay, well, everything's still good. We're good. We're going to have a season. We're going to have a full season. We'll be fine. So I had changed that. That's how I created it. I pitched it to admin. I pitched it to my parents. Said, look, we're just moving the schedule. We're still going to do spring. We're still going to do summer. We're still going to do in season. It's just going to start in September. instead of May. And I liked that idea because it kind of kept us on pace. And the nice thing is we would get a full, quote unquote, like spring ball with freshmen, which you don't ever get because freshmen don't come till June. So having a September be spring and getting everyone acclimated to everything was perfect because it's like, okay, well, cool. We're going to have a full month with these freshmen of true, real spring ball, which we never get. We normally get them for June / the month of June, then they get 3 weeks off and they're in helmets. So it was fantastic. I was like, we might actually be ahead of the game a little bit, which would be kind of nice. But then again, so would everybody else, depending on if everyone wins. So that was the other thing, the competitive equity piece. Well, some counties are going to go, some schools are going to go, some schools aren't. I understood that argument, but at the same time, I'm like, in my head, and this is going to be 100% opinion. In my head, I was like, you know what? I became a football coach and a teacher because I want to do what's best for my students and my student athletes. What's best for my students and my students athletes is to be in school or to be on the field. So I'm going to push, I'm going to fight, I'm going to claw and scratch to get them on the field. And some argue, well, then why are you doing that in August? I go, well, I don't want them to burn out either. That's like the number one cause of students and athletes quitting is burnout. So I didn't want them to burn out. So like, okay, we'll give them the month of August off. Period, end of story. We'll be fine. Everything will be all good. So went that route, took that month off. Like I said, created the new dead period. Numbers continue to fluctuate. 1 week we're up, 1 week we're down. We're having Zoom meetings. We're meeting about huddle. School started back up, so we're full distance learning. We did not come back like I had hoped. We were going to come back. So we ended up doing Zoom meetings, doing huddle, and because of that, I started right towards the end of August, started pitching, okay, hey, we're getting ready to come back. We're getting ready to come back. Well, then there was this pushback from up above, like, well, no, you're not coming back. I go, well, why not? This was the plan. This was the plan to come back these last 2 weeks in September, get them used to the cohorts, get them used to everything, and then boom, October would be spring, November would be summer, we'd have a dead period, and then we're getting ready to go in December. And they're like, well, we got these numbers. This is the new tier system. The new tier system was just about to come out, but we got this many cases. This. I was like, this isn't what we talked about though. So I had to push. I had to fight along with our trainer. We're like, no, we're fine. We were fine in June and July. The funny thing is, in June we did have one incident, which wasn't an incident, and this is just how the system worked. We had a coach get a phone call on a Monday saying that he may or may not have been exposed. So we're like, well, okay. Well, at that time, we're like, all right, well, we were kind of freaked out. And we're like, okay, well, we'll just shut everything down. We're not sure. We're just going to say, yeah, we followed protocol, but there's always that what if. So, like, let's just practice shutting everything down. So we shut everybody down for a week. Come to find out, he wasn't even in the office at the same time. He was supposed to have a dental appointment. He went on like that Thursday, Friday. The person who was quote unquote infected came in the Monday before him, almost a full week prior. The dental staff had already been tested. They had all come back negative, but he got a phone call saying he might. That ticked us all off. Like, cool, we missed a week because of this weird system they got. Again, I understand it. It was hard at the time. They were just starting this whole contact tracing thing. But we lost a week, and people kind of freaked, and that also helped us dwindle. Well, that assisted in us dwindling numbers as well because everyone freaked because we shut down for a week, and then we came back when we found out there was nothing to worry about. But then, again, that was where we started readjusting things. We had tweaked some holes that we had found, and we were fine. So we come back in September. We fight to get restarted. And this is where I made the mistake. I should have never stopped in August. I should have told the kids, hey, we're going to go once a week or twice a week, and we're just going to lift and condition. We're not even going to do any sports skill stuff. We're just going to lift and condition. That was my mistake because I didn't realize I was going to have to fight so hard towards the end of August to get us restarted because in my mind, as I was looking at the numbers, nothing had really changed. Nothing had really gotten worse. Nothing had really gotten better. July 4th had happened. Yeah, there was a little spike. But at the same time, I'm just kind of sitting here. I'm like, well, nothing has really changed. Like we're doing the same thing. We have the same protocol. But in my head, nothing had changed other than, well, if we can go, we can't go to school, we can't go to football practice. Like, well, that doesn't make any sense. But because I was like, if you look at it, everyone's just homeschooled now. I'm like, so as long as they're attending school, they should be able to go to practice. And as long as we're following the protocol, social distancing, temperature checks, sanitization, we're following all the rules, we should be good. There was talks of a waiver. We never did it. It is what it is. So we were trying to get it. We finally got the okay to go from our county health department. So we got the okay to go based on our protocol, based on everything we created. So we get to go. And that's where I'm going to kind of end it again. I didn't want to go super long on this, but we got the go ahead to come back in September. We were still in. That's when we were able to change to cohorts of 12 to 14, I think, and there was a max a number of 16. We never got that high, but now it's changed to 12 to 14, and that's where I'm going to end it because of just because of time. Again, I don't want to make these super long, and I'll cover part 3 next week. But again, we're going to continue distance learning. Practice does go well for a very, very long time. There's hints of politicalness that's now getting attached to it, which now really just divides everybody as far as, well, what are we really doing this for? Who's controlling this? And then of course you got extremes on both ends, like everybody's dying or this is all made up political. Like the crazy part of how divided things got, and it started affecting practice because you'd hear kids talking about it, you'd hear coaches talking about it, and it's like, no, we're just out here to lift and focus on football. I don't care what's going on politically. We're keeping everybody safe. So, but I'm going to cover how that kind of trickles in, and then right after the election, right around the second week of December, everybody gets shut back down. So I'm going to go over how things were going, how our practice plans changed, how our cohorts changed, what we started doing, and some huge news that came out in September with some staff changes and some changes and some pivots in the next general direction. So thank you again for the support. Any of you guys that are going through this, any of you California coaches out there that are going through it, there's a big thing. It's PartII. It's like another version of Band. It's an app. Get on it. There's like 230 schools. We're trying to get schools back in action as far as being able to play what we can consider almost a full season. We're trying to get that done. Share, like, subscribe, get that stuff done. We took surveys. We took health surveys as far as how many practice, how many visits, how many COVID positives, all that stuff, so we can present it to the governor and the county health department in hopes that we can get youth sports and football and everything back on track. So again, it's called PartII. There's a coach down in the Bay Area that's really kind of driving it. I don't want to put his name out there just because, again, I didn't talk to him beforehand, so I'm not going to put his name out there. But really good guy. He's really spearheading this thing. Again, like I said, there's 233 schools so far that have filled out the data, and the data is very promising. It is very promising. It's, from what I saw in there, there's no deaths. Yeah, there's been some positives, and there's been some positives on the coaches, but it's so minute. And again, from what I saw on that data, there was no deaths related to COVID. I'm sure someone might respond and say, well, now there is, or there is now. And again, I'm going by the data that I just saw. Literally, it was literally last night where all this data got shared. So could there be some new stuff today? Of course there could. There's always new data coming out. So again, thank you. Like, share, subscribe. If you got any questions, comments, please leave them down below. This Thursday, I'm probably going to I might cover some defensive stuff. I know I covered some offensive things, and I heard that it was kind of hard to see, so I might redo that video. Just I heard it was kind of hard to see the drawings I was putting up. So, but I might focus on some defensive stuff this Thursday, just for fun, just because I like defense a little bit, even though I'm an offensive guy. I do enjoy my defense. So, again, thank you very much. Be great, push limits, hold the line, and have a great day.